Today we're going to talk about product rule, but before we do that, let's actually start with what we learned before, the power rule. And one thing we said is you're allowed to do power rule to separate parts of like a polynomial, one term at a time. So I said something like this, x to the fourth plus x minus 1, that's an easy question. You just do power rule on each of the three terms separately. But you are not allowed to do power rule on these types of questions because the first one has some multiplication involved. Instead of a plus, I basically put the x minus 1 in parentheses and turned it into x to the fourth times x minus 1. And for the second one, I turned it into dividing. I put x to the fourth over x minus 1. So basically, you can't just do each part separately on these. What we're going to do is over the next two lessons, we're going to learn first how to do the first one today, because this is a product. So what you're seeing right here, this is a product, and we're going to learn the product rule to take the derivative of that. And then this one over here is a quotient. It's dividing. Fractions mean divide. And in the next lesson, we'll learn the quotient rule for that one. But what I wanted to start with is just a reminder, you cannot just take the derivative of each part separately for either of those questions. So let's get to the actual product rule. Let's talk about that first one. So first of all, the word product means multiplication. Product is when you have two different things being multiplied together. In this case, it's two functions. If one of them is a constant, then you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do product rule. Like 2x. 2x is technically a product, but you don't have to do the product rule because the 2 is a constant. So what you're really talking about is two different functions of x. So I'm going to say for the notes, we're going to call it f of x times g of x. So all of a sudden, think of that last example. I had x to the fourth, that would have been my f of x, times x minus 1, that would have been my g of x. And that's what the product rule is for, is taking the derivative of a product. So here's what the product rule looks like. We say the derivative of, and I'm going to call the functions f and g. I took the of x's out just to make it a little bit more simple looking. But we have the derivative of f times g, that's our product. And what it is f prime, the derivative of f, times g, the original function g, plus g prime times f. So basically in words, you do end up taking the derivative of f and g separately, but that's not just your answer. You don't just take the derivative of each one and move on to the next question. You actually take the derivative of each function, multiply that times the other function. The derivative of f gets multiplied by g, the derivative of g gets multiplied by f, and then it all gets added together at the end. Now what I like to say to myself when I'm doing a product rule question, I think of it as like f is the first function, g is the second function, and I do derivative of the first times second plus derivative of the second times first. So let's try one out. You look at this question and right away, hopefully you notice that this is a product rule question because it's a product. I'm asking you to take the derivative of, and there's two separate things in parentheses that are being multiplied together. So I'm going to think of it like this. I'm going to say the 2x plus 3. Let's think of that as our first function. And then the x squared minus 2x plus 3, I'm going to think of as my second function. And it's a product. It's first times second. So when I go to do this problem, you're going to end up, and I'm going to kind of set up a framework of parentheses. I'm going to have, this would be the derivative of the first function times the second function, not the derivative, just the second, plus, and then this one would be the derivative of the second function times the first. Now there's two things you can fill in directly from the question. The second function is x squared minus 2x plus 3. And the first function is 2x plus 3. So now all you have to do is take two derivatives. Each one should be a nice simple power rule, just like we did in the last lesson. And put those in the parentheses, and then we'll have a few cleanup steps at the end. So when I go to take the derivative of 2x plus 3, these are the ones that are kind of not even really power rule, it's more of a shortcut. Basically, the derivative of 2x is 2. And the derivative of 3 is 0. The derivative of any constant is 0. So the way I like to think of it is whenever you take the derivative of a constant, that part just disappears. So really the derivative of the first function is just the number 2. That's it. Okay, now the derivative of the second function, now we do have to do power rule. So when I'm taking the derivative of the x squared part, I'm going to do power rule. So I multiply by 2. And then I lower the exponent by 1. I'll put a 1 there. Normally I wouldn't, but just to kind of show my work. It ends up just being 2x, or 2x to the first power. And then we move to the next term. The derivative of negative 2x is negative 2. And the derivative of 3 is 0 again, so it's just going to disappear. So basically, the only derivative work I did, I took the derivative of 2x plus 3 and got 2. I took the derivative of this whole function and got 2x minus 2. And now I'm done with the derivative part. The rest of this question is all about cleaning it up and getting an answer. So what I would do on the first part, which is the first two sets of parentheses, let's just distribute the 2. That would be 2x squared minus 4x plus 6. And on the second one, we have to FOIL, or we have to multiply binomials. So there I would have 4x squared plus 6x, and I would have minus 4x and minus 6. Now if you combine all of the like terms you have anywhere, that's going to give you your final answer. So we have 2x squared and 4x squared gives me 6x squared. We have negative 4x, positive 6x, and negative 4x gives me negative 2x. And that's actually it. The 6 and the negative 6 are going to cancel. So my final answer there is 6x squared minus 2x. But more importantly, that's how the product rule works. You can't just take the derivatives and multiply them together. You have to do derivative of the first one times the second one, plus derivative of the second one times the first one, get that big mess, clean it up, and that'll be your final answer. Now, the last thing I want to mention for today, I want you guys to notice that a lot of times in a derivative question, there's more than one way to do it. And sometimes it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, you can do it this way, you can do it that way. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes it's like, okay, if I do it this way, it takes a lot of work. If I do it this way, it's done really easy. So you guys want to get in the habit now of really thinking about different ways to do questions and trying to pick the right one. So what we're going to do now, we're going to redo the question from before, and we're actually not going to use product rule. We're going to just multiply it out at the beginning, and then you'll see all we'll need is power rule to do it. So let's rework that question one more time. Only this time, I'm going to do this. I'm not taking the derivative yet. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply. I'm going to basically distribute the 2x first. That would be 2x cubed minus 4x squared and plus 6x. And then I'll distribute the 3 plus 3x squared minus 6x and plus 9. And let's clean up our like terms. We have 2x cubed. We have a total of negative 1x squared. The 6x and the negative 6x will cancel, and then we have a plus 9 on the end. Okay, now notice, all that work I've done was just cleaning up the problem. This out here tells me I still have to take the derivative. That wasn't the derivative question. That was just a couple extra steps to make this work easier. But now it's not a product anymore. So now all of a sudden it looks like the homework from last section, where all you have to do is power rule 3 times. So for my final answer to this question, let's start with the 2x cubed and do power rule. So I multiply by 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And then I lower the exponent by 1. I get 6x squared. Let's do the same thing with the negative x squared. I multiply by 2. That would give me negative 2. I lower the exponent to 1. That would be 1. So I'll leave it. And the derivative of 9 is 0. It's going to disappear. And if you remember from when we did this example, that's the same answer. 6x squared minus 2x. Now, this way was probably a little bit easier. I don't think this is one of those where like one way is really hard and one way is really easy. I think it was pretty much about the same as far as level of difficulty. But like I said, it's a good habit for right now for you guys to get into to start thinking about different ways to do it. And I will say that there isn't always a shortcut. The reason we learn product rule is because eventually we will see questions where you can't multiply first. You have to do product rule. But basically that's the end of the notes for today. That's the product rule. And you guys can take a look at our assignment for tonight, and I will answer questions tomorrow.